Jeff Hillary is a guy I worked with in L.A. for a little while. He found me. I was working for KGO doing flying traffic reports. Jeff called, and I went up to see him and got a tour of the stations. And I said, "What about me?" And he said, "I can't afford you." I said, "Try me."
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. By the way, check out our Instagram at JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57. And our conversation concludes now with radio DJ, program director, as well as voiceover talent, Bob Gowa.
It's just, it's pop music for a different crowd.
Oh, yeah.
But doing country radio was not all that foreign to me.
When you introduce those artists, how oftentimes did you get to have a meet and greet with them? Because sometimes the DJ just introduces the artist and doesn't actually get to meet them, but sometimes they do.
Right. I almost always got to meet them and chat with them backstage before the show. And, that was fun. They were real nice people.
That's great. So that station was country music the entire, I guess, 6 years or so you were there.
7 years. Mm-hmm.
Then they, I think, eventually did flip back to some sort of like classic rock format later on, if I'm not mistaken.
That was a different station that adopted those call letters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of an album rock thing.
And then you joined Marin Broadcasting in 1987.
Yes.
Which radio stations were those up in the Bay Area? And then eventually they did acquire 2 San Diego stations as well.
The station was, when I got there, it was KTIM. It had been a long-time progressive rock station, freeform, until it was bought by the guy who I worked for. His name was Art Astor. Art was a real character. And I like characters, so we got along pretty well. But he had pissed off a lot of people in town when he changed the format. A lot of advertisers went away. But, I got to do everything I wanted to do there. And when he bought the San Diego stations, he sent me down to scope it out and tell him what I thought he should do. And I did, and he took my advice. So, yeah, it was good for me to be there.
And the San Diego stations themselves, what were those stations and what was the format?
The AM was KOWN. Seem to remember it was full service, like middle of the road. And the FM was a jazz station, KOWN-FM.
Oh.
Art took them both to country formats, which was, just not really welcome or needed at the time, but it did okay. And he modeled it after his Orange County station, which always did great.
KIK-FM.
Yep.
94.3, which for about 2 years they simulcast at the 94.3 in the San Fernando Valley, which previously had been Magic 94.3, and before that KGIL, which was another legendary station in Southern California.
And you know what it was before that? It was KVFM.
Wow.
And if you want to go back to prehistoric times, it was KSFV.
Oh, that makes sense. San Fernando Valley.
Yep.
Did you ever get to meet Chuck Southcott, who was a longtime program director there at KGIL?
No, never did.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, I worked with him at the Music of Your Life radio network probably about 28 years ago. Really nice guy. And he programmed Music of Your Life with Gary Owens, Johnny Magnus. It was a bunch of legends, Wink Martindale, Peter Marshall, and
the KMPC heavyweights.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, Magnus was just a hoot and a holler, both on the air and as well as off the air. And then Gary Owens, my gosh, this guy just never lost it. He still had the wit, the charm, the hilarity that just oh my gosh. And a heck of a nice guy, too.
There's a story about him pulling into the parking lot at KMPC one day. He had a reserved parking space. He got there one day, and there was another car parked in the space. So Gary did what anybody would do. He stopped his car. He got out of the car, went to the trunk, removed his shotgun, and blew out the tires of the offending vehicle. And got away with it. Of course, it was Gary Owens. What are they going to
do? Oh, man. Well, Gary, now you're reminding me about how Gary told me the story about how B. Mitchell Reed and Bill Bounce did not get along. And he says
No, they didn't.
They would have fist fights in the station. It was kind of like, the two Girl Scouts and Airplane, the movie, pretty much, when it came to that.
Yeah, I can imagine so, yeah. Mitch hated violence.
And then for 6 years, you're focused mainly on voiceover work. How early in your career did you start the freelance work that you're now doing?
Well, what I'm doing now is keeping my mouth shut. I retired about 10 years ago.
Oh.
I always did voiceovers. It was, in addition to whatever radio job I was doing. And, after a while, unless you're one of the 2% of voice guys who get 99% of the work, all it can be is an adjunct to your day-to-day radio. It's a full-time hustle. When I got close to retiring from radio, I decided I was going to stop hustling voiceovers. And I did. And the last 10 years have been pretty good.
And you also, from 1997 to 1999, looking at your LinkedIn, you're program director of KFGY as well as news director of KSRO. Tell us about those stations and who did you hire to be on the air at the time?
A couple of stations in Santa Rosa. Jeff Hillary is a guy I worked with in L.A. for a little while. He found me. I was I was working for KGO doing flying traffic reports. And Jeff called, and I went up to see him and got a tour of the stations, and I said, "What about me?" And he said, "I can't afford you." I said, "Try me." And he hired me. I was just a DJ at the FM.
Mm-hmm.
Until the program director fell off the wagon, and they asked me if I would take over, and I did. The hire that I did two hires that I'll always be proud of. One was Frank Terry.
Yeah, the legendary Frank Terry, who used to be on KHJ Los Angeles.
Yeah, Frank and I knew each other from KNEW and KSAN, and I was blown away. He agreed to come to work for us.
Wow.
And he did, and he was a big hit. Everybody loved him. He was a good man.
I've heard nothing but great things about him.
He was that good, a good friend. And I hired another guy he was a kid, and he had a terrible voice for radio, according to old radio guys, had a funny voice, and he was as funny as hell. The kids loved him. He did evenings, and he was a big hit. I'm really glad I hired him. I'm still in touch with him. Good man.
What was his name?
He was Stacy Hoblitzel. He was on our Froggy station, so he called himself Splash Gordon.
I love it.
And he was really into it.
Wow, that's great. Frank Terry is somebody that, I've heard about over the years. What was it about Frank Terry that really stood out, besides being a nice person? Anything else that really just, drew people to him? And anything interesting about him?
It was genuine. What you heard on the air was what you hear off the air. And he lived a lifestyle. He was a horseman. Mm-hmm. He played with a band. He was in Wade Through It and the Nude Dudes. He and Les Turpin, one of the old Boss Jocks, they had this band, and they were funny, and they were great. I think what drew people to Frank was just that he was real.
Any of that music that he recorded around anymore that you know of?
No, I don't know if they ever recorded. They played gigs for their own amusement, I'm sure.
And then after KFGY and SRO, you went to work for Verizon for about 5 years, a hiatus from radio. Dave Hullabalooer one time said your your worst day in radio is still better than your best day in real estate.
Yeah.
Was that way at Verizon too for you?
Not really, because I was always into the technology. I used to take apart phones and figure out how they worked when I was a kid. And when cellular came out, I was fascinated by it. It was still a toy for rich people when I went to work there. And I made a ton of money. And, because I was working with electronics, I was pretty happy and enthusiastic about it. I was there a couple of years. And then I went back into radio. I worked at, I was at KGO.
Yeah, News Talk 810.
Yeah, it was KGO for about, on and off, the better part of about 12 years. And that was also, it was a terrific time. I worked with the best staff in radio.
Who are you closest with at KGO? Because you had some legendary personalities there.
I wasn't particularly close with any of the on-air people. I had a lot of friends there, but most of us were just, in production and engineering. Yeah, I can't think of any of the on-air people I was particularly close with, but we were all friendly.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it said that you were not only a news person, but also a flying traffic reporter. Did you fly the helicopter yourself, or is there somebody else piloting that?
No. The pilots and reporters were separate by the time I started doing it. I learned to fly the airplane just so that if there were an emergency, I could put it on the ground. And I could fly it from here to there with a pilot next to me. I used to take over sometimes when the pilot was tired and wanted to take a nap. I'd let him. But I never did learn to take off. Takeoffs are optional. Landings are mandatory. Anyway, that in a nutshell is my life in radio.
Wow. What was the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Don't give up your day job. The best piece of advice yes, I'll tell you. Harry Shearer once said, don't ever work for free. Get paid in advance, because when you're a giveaway, you're a throwaway. And there were always people who wanted you to work for free. And there were a lot of people who would do that just because they could be on the radio. And I didn't buy into that. I never did. And Harry was right.
Very good advice, actually, because people take advantage of you if they know they're going to offer it for free.
Oh, yeah. And I still see it today. People are offering to do voiceovers for $5. That sort of thing. I wouldn't go there. No.
I was a sucker that way in some ways, and I regret having done that.
Well, a lot of people were. You're not alone.
Well, Bob, it's been great talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah. Kill AI.
Amen. I like it. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you calling me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care, Josh.
Okay. And again, we've been talking with radio personality and voiceover talent Bob Gowa. If you'd like to find out more about him, just go to his website at bobgowa.com. That's bobgowa.com. And until next time, this is Josh Jacobs for the Talking Archive. Keep your mind on the things above. And as you hit that open road, don't be a slow down spectator.